Hello. Welcome back to another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. In for a treat today. For the first time on Victory Never Sleeps, I believe we have an AFA member, an AFA leader from outside of the United States. So we got folk builder Erik Lugnet from Sweden, almost in Finland, staying up in the middle of the night over there to make this broadcast and talk to all you fine folks. So we're very excited to have him on. As always, we are broadcasting live on YouTube, on Twitter or X, on Odyssey, Rumble, Entropy, and VK as well. So you're welcome to ask us questions on any and all of those platforms. If you would like to donate or participate in super chats to where you can get your question up to the front of the line, or if you just want to help us out, it's always appreciated. Money goes to the AFA General Fund and helps us accomplish all of the things that we are doing our best to accomplish for our gods and our folk. Yeah, you can do that on, sorry, I was distracted for a second. You can donate or do the super chats on Entropy or Rumble. Coming up very soon, we have Freyr's Harvest Feast in Montana. That's at a member's homestead there that he and his family are building. The McNallans are set and ready to attend that, so it'll be exciting for anybody to get a chance to meet the founders, the founder of Asatru in the modern era, and certainly the founders of the Asatru Folk Assembly, and Sheila, who is kind of the template for any folk building in the AFA, literally building this family for, on largely her own efforts for almost 20 years. And she's still going strong, building it with us today as we are in our 28th year. So both those people are great to meet, lovely people. If you can make it, if you can make it and you're not a member and you want to show up, please reach out to your folk builder and they can get you all squared away. If you want to attend and you are not a member, please reach out to your folk builder. They'll get you squared away. If you want to attend and you are a member, also reach out to your folk builder. They'll give you any details you may need to know. This one's out there in the sticks a little bit, but I tell you what, nobody ever goes to these things and then regrets it. But a lot of people see pictures after the fact and regret not going. Seeing that of Midsummer 2009 and just kicking myself for not attending is why I went to 2010, why, it's kind of what started me on being able to sit here today. So go out to these events if you can. The next one after that, if for some reason you can't make it, or even if you can, we're going to be hosting winter nights at Sigerheim for the very first time. Now, this is usually a more of a Pennsylvania, Ohio, Northeast event, but due to some logistics things this year, it's being hosted at Sigerheim. Very excited to have you guys out there. If you've been there, you know it's a magical and amazing place. If you have not been there yet, please come down and share that experience with us and, breathe the sacred air of Sigerheim. It's such a special place, and I can't communicate that enough to you until you're there and experience it yourself. So we look forward to seeing you there. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you, Erik, and have you, something I do for anybody's first time on here is have them tell folks a little bit about themselves, how they got involved in Asatru, and how they got involved in the Asatru Folk Assembly. So if you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, so I guess the most important things, I'm married. I'm a father of two daughters. I live up in northern Sweden on the border of Sweden and Finland. And I've been a member of the AFA since early 2018. And I'd been aware of the AFA for a little while, maybe a year or something like that, and my sort of journey towards finding and rediscovering my roots, really, I would say, started perhaps around 2016, and just a lot of being exposed to a lot of different voices and ideas on the internet, and coming out of a secular atheist point of view, which had never really sat well with me, really. I always felt that something was lacking, was missing, and I'd actually always been sort of intrigued by Christianity, I suppose you could say. I like to read the Bible, and I was fascinated by the idea of having sort of these mythical stories that would then instruct you in your day-to-day life. It was just that the stories of the Bible didn't make sense to me, but it was very interesting, that just that idea, and then starting to bit by bit discovering Asatru, it started to make sense that this is what I'm looking for. And but it wasn't until I met my wife and we got engaged that I decided that we're going to be part of this church, the Asatru Folk Assembly. I'd been lurking around on Facebook when we still were on Facebook, and I saw these pictures of people getting together and smiles and children and just this proper vibrant community, and just this focus on the family, and it all made sense to me. And once I knew that I was going to form a family of my own, I knew that this was going to be the people for my family that we were going to make ourselves a part of. So that's when we both joined in 2018, and I started folk building in should be about 2 years ago now, 2021. I became an apprentice and started folk building, and I've been doing that ever since. And I'm very, very happy to be part of the AFA, and I'm very, very happy being able to help out in any way I can in my role as in leadership.
Well, we appreciate it. We're happy to have you over there doing what you're doing and interfacing with our European members. And I actually met you in Colorado. Can you tell people a little bit about how you found yourself in Colorado for, I forget what year that was now. And that's one of the really big assets, is you're culturally familiar with the United States as well as Sweden. So it's a very good interface and nothing's lost in translation.
No, right. So the reason I ended up being in Colorado is because my wife is from Colorado. She has mostly Swedish and Danish roots, but her family has been in the U.S. for a couple of generations. But so we met online, and once she came over to Sweden first, and that's when we got engaged. And I ended up going to Colorado one time for, I think it was a week, and I got to meet her parents and her extended family, and just seeing Colorado it's a very, very different landscape compared to here. Colorado, you just see miles and miles and miles, and here in Sweden it's just you can't see very far without there being trees, especially up north here. So it was quite the experience. So my wife Laura was doing stuff with the AFA in Colorado, which was headed by then folk builder Jason Plurd, now Gothi Plurd. So she was involved with that and attending events as often as she could. And Jason was going to host Thorfest, and this was 2019. And at this point, me and Laura, we were in Sweden. She was visiting me, and Laura suggested, or maybe it wasn't so much a suggestion, but she said that I think that we should go and support Jason. I think we should go to Thorfest. And then it also came up that, hey, we should have Matt marry us there, because Matt is going to attend the event as well. So we sort of just decided on a whim that, yeah, we're going over there and we're going to do it. We're going to get this marriage done properly. And that was quite the event. Unfortunately, I was quite ill at that event, actually. So I was bedridden most of it. It was pretty terrible, actually. But I managed to get myself standing up, and I remember there was someone who commented that I was shaking, and they were saying, "Oh, look at him! He is so excited to get married. He's so it's like, whoa, the nerves are getting to him." And I remember saying, like, it's not the nerves; it's just that I'm so cold. I'm having a fever here. But it went well, and it was very very special. It was an event on the smaller side of things, but it was very sort of intimate and very warm. It was a very nice time, and I'm very thankful that we did end up going there, so that I could meet other AFA members, which I hadn't done until that point, and also to meet you, Matt. So I think that was very important for both me and Laura. And I think it's worth mentioning for people who are members or are perhaps not yet members, that until you've met with other AFA members and been to an event, you don't really understand what it is all about. It is theoretical, it's sort of ethereal, it's sort of distant, and it is not personal. But once you go out of your way and put in the effort and really have the courage, because it takes some courage to go out and meet people, until you do that, you won't really understand. And you need to do that to really get involved in the community and become a part of the church proper. But yeah, that was Thorfest 2019.
Well, I was tremendously honored to meet you guys there and be able to perform your wedding. It was a special event. It was small, but like you said, it was a really intimate, close feeling, and it was really nice. I'm glad I'm not the only one saying it on here. I think people don't necessarily believe me. But yeah, this becomes real when you go out and you get involved and you meet people. And it may not seem like a big deal. Geographically, I guess it is for some folks, but it's scary getting outside of your comfort zone and meeting a group of people that you don't know and that you're not sure what to expect. And, whatever preconceptions, we all have preconceptions in our mind before we do something. Facing those and, I don't know, taking the step from this being theory to this being practice, I get that it's scary for folks, and I get that it's a challenge, and it is so very, very rewarding when you step up to the challenge. But yeah, I can't encourage people more. If you're not a member, you should come to an event and learn all the wonderful reasons that you should be a member. And if you are a member and you haven't been out to something, you got to fix that. Any way we can do to help you fix it, that's literally our job, and we want to get you involved. So reach out to us individually, collectively, or your local folk builder, and let's get you doing some stuff with each other or with the rest of us. Before we get too far in the weeds, Eric, if you could talk to folks about our heroine of the evening today, Queen Sigríð. If you could just kind of give people a rundown if they've never heard of her and are completely unfamiliar with her, or even Asatru for that matter, and happen to be tuning into the program.
Yeah, so we're going to speak about Queen Sigríð, or as she's also known as Sigríð the Haughty, which we will get into why she received that nickname. And when we're talking about her life, we're talking about the late 1900s and the early 1000s. So Sigrid was a Swedish noblewoman and was first married to King Erik Segersäll, or Erik the Victorious, whom she had their son with, Olaf Skötung. Unfortunately, Erik passed away from illness after some time, and Queen Sigrid was left without a husband. And it is said that she retreated to her estate, and that her position and her wealth drew in the attention of many suitors. Unfortunately for these suitors, and perhaps for Sigrid herself as well, was that these were suitors that were not up to her standard. She considered them to be not high enough born. They were sort of these low-born nobles, is what she thought of them as. And besides that, they were also poor of manners. And this is where her nickname comes in, is that there were two suitors that were especially atrocious towards her. And so she decided that she was going to make an example out of them. So she invited these two suitors to a feast and had them served great meals and a lot of alcohol, and waited until they drunk themselves into a stupor before she had them locked inside the building and had it set on fire, burning them to death. And she was hoping that this would put an end to all the proposals that were pouring in from these poor-mannered suitors. And this is where she gets her nickname, the Haughty, from. But Sigrid did eventually agree to marry Olav Tryggvason, who ended up not being deterred by the fact that the queen had killed two of her suitors already. And they did meet up and were going through the marriage ceremony, when it turns out that Sigrid was not willing to convert to Christianity, which Olav had already converted to Christianity, and was a big player in the Christianization of Northern Europe. And when Olav learned that she would in fact not convert to Christianity, she refused. He was outraged, and was so outraged that he ended up slapping Queen Sigrid in her face, asking why he would ever marry a heathen dog. And supposedly, Queen Sigrid answered that this display might very well spell the end of Olav, that it was going to likely be his death. And so, needless to say, this marriage did not turn out to be a marriage, and they parted ways. But Sigrid did not forget this slight and was not going to let it slide. And she did end up remarrying the King of Denmark, Sven Tveskæg, or Forkbeard. And Sven already had animosity towards Olav, who had married Sven's sister. And so Sigrid found fertile ground when she convinced her new husband, and also enlisted the help of her son, Olof, whom she'd had with Erik the Victorious, to go into warfare, or go into war with Olav. And this they did. They got together. So we have Sven Tveskæg, and we have Olof, and then we also have the Swedish Jarl Erik Håkonsson, who was a son-in-law to Sven. And the three of them ambushed Olav out in sea. And this was the Battle of Svolder, which is one of the great maritime battles of ancient times. And Queen Sigrid's words came true. Olav was was overwhelmed by the force that had been gathered, and supposedly he threw himself overboard as they were taking his ship. He threw himself overboard, fully armored, into the sea, as he said that he'd rather die by his own hand than be killed by his enemy. And with his reign coming to an end, the spoils of war were then shared between these three men that had defeated him in battle.
All right. Important for a lot of reasons, but the value that she placed on herself and her dignity and realizing her worth and refusing to compromise on the things that were fundamental to her value and things that were important to her in her life are why her name echoes through the ages and why we celebrate her. Her standing firm for our gods, even when it wasn't convenient, and holding true to them is certainly something worth celebrating. And I think she was certainly our first female, or our first heroine in our heroes that we honor with a day of remembrance, followed by the folk mother years later. But it's really a testament to loyalty, I'd say, in a lot of ways. Troth with our gods. She was true to the Aesir, whereas it's easy to say, but it's much harder to do when you're on the spot. So yeah, she's very inspirational, especially for our young ladies and our daughters. That brings me to the first question we have. It's actually from your wife, Eric. Hello, Matt. I hope all is well. I have a question for you and Eric on tonight's VNS. How can we raise our daughters to carry themselves with dignity and confidence in their worth, like Queen Sigríð did? Thank you. So, Eric, as a father, as we both have this in common, being a father of daughters, and our girls are all very young, what ideas do you have, or what wisdom do you have to share on how we can raise our daughters to value themselves the same way that Queen Sigríð did?
Well, I think that it's very important to, if we just contrast that with what it means to be a young woman in the modern world, you could say. Commenting from the outside, obviously not being a woman, but is that I believe that women today do not understand the value that they actually have, and it is a different value than men have. So men are the pursuers, and women are, in a sense, the prize that is being pursued, and it's this great wealth that women have. And I think that women have been convinced that, in fact, they're not special. They're just like men. So they should go out and be men, and they should go and pursue things, and they should go out and actualize themselves, or however you'd want to phrase it. Then, and emphasis is being put on having, quote unquote, a good time, or going out and getting things for yourself. When I think that for us to live optimally, or live really in alignment with our nature and what is good and right, women need to understand that they are incredible. They have these great gifts. They are the carriers of new life, And that is both a gift, but it's also a responsibility that they have. They have a responsibility to their ancestors, to their family, to themselves, to the gods, to guard this treasure that they have. They're given this this great beauty and sort of sixth sense, if you will. These gifts that nowadays are being just taken and abused, and they really need to be taught that they have something of incredible great value, and it needs to be safeguarded, and they need to be taught that there are people out there that will not hesitate to manipulate or by force try to take those gifts away from them, just for themselves to have a good time, or they just want the shiny thing. So I think that we need to teach our daughters, our young women, that they're so incredibly valuable, and they're doing themselves a disservice when they tell themselves that they're actually not that valuable and they can just, quote unquote, go around and have a good time. It's not doing them any favors. They have a responsibility to safeguard their gifts and really have men come and try to prove themselves and show themselves to be worthy of the gift, so that they can then come into a union of marriage and then birth the next generation and build new glories and wealth for our folk as a whole. So I think that is the key, that we need to teach our young women that you have wealth, you have great gifts, but you need to be aware of this, and you need to hold yourself in great respect, and respect for your ancestors and gods. They're the reason that you're here, and not throw this away because someone has told you that, oh, you should just go out and have a good time. You only live once, or whatever crap that modernity will spew at them. And I think this is very, like we were talking about Sigrid, is that she understood her value. She understood that she was desired, but she respected herself to such a degree that she outright had two suitors killed, because she felt that she was being dishonored, because these were people that were not worthy of her gifts, of her, and were not mannered enough to address her properly. So that's what I have to say on that.
So I've got a lot, and I don't want to miss the point, or I don't want to, I guess, flow stream of consciousness here and maybe not make sense, but there's some things that I'd really like to say. One thing that, I think a lot of us notice in society generally, but in my position as Alsherier Gothi, and just as a Gothi generally, a lot of what I do is counseling and helping people. And we talk on this program a lot about soul sickness and about the various ways that our people are suffering because of, social conditioning and sicknesses of the time that we live in, and separation from our traditional values and from our gods for a very long time, generationally. You mentioned a lot of this in what you were saying, Eric, and I think it was spot on. Society has taught our women for, 60 or 70 years now, varying shades of women and feminine things are bad, or are not of as much value, are not as good, are less than, are subpar in a direct comparison to men. So the only way that women can be valuable and taken seriously and celebrated is by them pretending that they're men and trying to be the best men they can be. And that is terribly damaging in so many ways. But one of them is it set up a paradigm to where they cannot possibly win. If the ultimate arbiter of value is man or not man, the very best woman will never be better than the very worst man. Because at the end of the day, you know, not to be vulgar, but they can drop their pants. One of them's a man, one of them's not. That's such a low standard, and it's such an insidious device that it puts a goal in front of them that no matter how hard they tried, they could never possibly be satisfied with or reach. But in the meantime, we've watched generations of ladies spend their life pursuing something they could never quite attain and missing out on all the amazing things that are inherent to them, and look back with a lot of regret. And one of the things that I've seen is this desperate need for acknowledgement. One thing that I hate seeing is whenever we have a symbol and someone wants to raise a general toast to men, or to, you know, if it's Father's Day and they want to raise a toast to the fathers, if they're talking about soldiers and they want to talk about men who've gone and fought and died, you can almost count on it. There's a knee-jerk immediate response. I want to raise a horn too to the women that did stuff. Yay, women. And there's obvious reasons that that's cringy and not great. But what it says to me on a deeper level is there's this desperate need for validation that if men get praised, they have to get something too, because there's a desperation there. And I don't care if they want to raise a horn to girl power. What I care about is the fact that something inside of them is broken to where they are so desperate for that acknowledgement. And I want my daughter raised in a place where she doesn't feel a desperate need to do that. And you'll notice men don't do that. If it's Mother's Day and we want to raise a horn to the mothers, somebody's like, dads are good too. Nobody does that. Because we don't have, that's not one of the ways that our soul is broken. It is one of the things about our ladies I would like to see fixed. And I think it has this inherent devaluation that our culture, especially nowadays when, you know, we're as a society pretending that gender doesn't exist. Reality has a way of pulling the carpet out from under you if you exist in an imaginary bubble of wokeness that by legislation people aren't allowed to pop. When reality sets in, you realize that in the competition to be a man, no matter what surgeries and hormones and anything you do, you will never reach that goal. That's devastating if that's the only way you see value. Queen Sigríð exuded value. She not only did she understand her value, but her contemporaries did as well. That's why the suitors were lining up. She had tremendous value in her femininity, in her being a woman, in her being the mother of kings, in her being able to produce offspring of, she is that blood link to the kings of old, to the kings of the future, of dynasties bringing them together, of literally forging kingdoms through choices that she made. And she felt that, and everyone around her knew that. So this goes into, you know, it's me and Eric, two guys sitting here, you know, telling you ladies about lady stuff. And in a way it's preposterous. In another way, we're two fathers of daughters who are tremendously interested in the things that we're saying because they matter to us in a way that they isn't as readily available to maybe some others. So one of the things I always getting a little bit emotional thinking about it. I apologize for that, but just thinking of stuff with my daughter, I always try to, I don't know, tell her how special she is. Tell her, in silly ways. Just like, yay, Aubrey's the best. Yay. And just tell her how great she is all the time because I don't want her feeling like she's not. I want to reinforce that and ingrain that from literally the day she was born to where she knows that and she feels that. Because I think that lack of feeling valuable often puts our ladies in very vulnerable positions when they are least able to fend them off, when they're young, when they're in school age, when they're around, teenagers and guys into their 20s, they're put in a very vulnerable position. And I don't want her to have those questions in her mind about her value that she's going into the game with. One of the things that's fundamental in what we do and in the tradition of our ancestors is this special, there's so many things, a couple of things just to mention off the top of it. When it came to having a tangibility with the interaction with our gods and with the world beyond the veil, women have always had a special ability that way that men don't have. Women are much more likely to be perceptive of those things, to have what, some would call second sight, to be able to interact with spiritual forces in a way that men either can't or it's much harder for them to come by. It's one of the things that Tacitus talks about amongst our ancestors and why the position of vulva or saithkona was such an important thing, because these women had this ability inherently to their sex, to their gender that the men didn't have. So there's that, and it goes into, and I hope this makes sense, and please ask questions if this wanders and isn't as clear as I'd like it to be. Women have an ability to shape and distribute power in a way that men don't. Now, men wield power, men execute power with their will, but that power is transmitted and bestowed by the women and by the people they choose to acknowledge, to show favor to give themselves to, in a way. The prize of Queen Sigríð to whatever man was able to win her as a wife was a tremendous transmission of power and of dignity and of status, of regality itself. And we see that in our ritual culture. That's the reason that the horn passes in high symbol from women to the person speaking back to women. That ability of controlling who gets the horn, who's served first in the feasting hall, who gets their drinks first, the order in which people are seated. We see that tremendously. A really good book to read, ladies, if you're interested in this, is Lady with the Mead Cup. It is a dry read. It is repetitive, but it is worth the labor. And it speaks a lot about that ability to show and to distribute power. And all of that may seem ethereal, but in real world situations, you see this. In a room full of people, women distribute social credit in a very important way. The highest, objectively, all things being equal, the highest valued guys in that room, if all the women ignore them and pick out one of the lower valued guys and show him deference and attention and take care of him and ooh and ah over what he says, immediately the power dynamic of that room changes. And I think that we've all seen that. It's one of the reasons we talk about our ladies and their ability to be frith weavers. If we're in a room and me and Eric are having a dispute amongst each other, Mandy and Laura on the side can fix all of that in a way that men don't do nearly as well. They have the ability to bring us together, to soothe our, anger or whatever indignity we feel we've suffered or whatever, and make that work. They have the ability to take guys who are shy, who are on the wall, who are scared to talk, make them feel like $1,000,000 and introduce them to the group to where they're part of stuff and they're included. They have the ability to take guys that are acting inappropriately, who are behaving ignobly, who are being bullies, whatever else they're doing. By not showing those guys attention, they're arbiters of what is socially acceptable or not socially acceptable. And women possess a tremendous power for that, not just in terms of regality or distribution of spiritual might with the drinking horn, of just helping groups of people get along together, of the smooth flow or not of society. They have those choices. They possess tremendous power amongst themselves, and it's important for, I guess, the social economy. When women hold themselves with dignity, things function in a really special way and have tremendous potential that they don't have when those women are functioning out of desperation or out of a lack of self-esteem. It messes up that whole economy. It messes up society. The ability to, women are extremely important. They're extremely valuable inherently in the gifts and the blessings that they come into this world with. And it's very important to instill, and this is back to the question of what we can do with our daughters. We can show them other female role models that are doing it right and encourage their interaction and learning from these women. We can build them up from the day they are born to celebrate how wonderful them being women is and how special they are. And we can reinforce that and build a solid foundation. When children go out into the world and become adults, so much of their strengths and their weaknesses go back to childhood and how they were raised and experiences they had when they were still forming their sense of who they were and their identity in the world. We can't fix everything for them, but if in those, 18 years that we have that much influence over them, if we can fill them up with that much value and love and sense of self, they're much better equipped to face the world. And so I'm hopeful that we can all do our very best at making that happen. So the ladies of, 20 years from now are in a better situation than the ladies of 20 years ago. And hopefully that keeps getting better. That was rambly, but it's something I think about since I had a daughter. It's amazing how everything changes when you have kids. And I knew that before I had kids. It's something you hear all the time, but you know it on a much different level when you do. And I absolutely feel that. So speaking of one of the ladies that our women would do well to look up to and learn from, Githya Anna says, Oofda, what time is it over there? Assume she's talking to you, Eric.
Yes, so it is 03:44 a.m. at this moment.
There you have it. And anybody who's curious, it's 6:45 p.m. here in Reno. Our next question, and I think this is something a lot of people wonder about because we hear horror stories. Eric, how is the political climate in Sweden? Is Sweden as woke as the United States is?
I suppose that's sort of a complex question. In a sense, the US is further ahead on many things when it comes to woke than Sweden is. The difference is that I think the US, you guys have a lot of good foundations that you still stand on. I'm thinking of your right to freedom of speech and your at least in several of your states, that you're able to own firearms and use them in self-defense, which is something that we lack in Sweden. And we also have great limitations on free speech. But when it comes to these really, really extreme ideas that come from the woke side of things, that stuff really seems to be coming from America mostly. It seems that America is sort of the factory for these ideas, and then these ideas then get shipped off to the rest of the world. And we're seeing these ideas coming in more and more so as time passes. But so in that sense, I think that we're not as woke as America, but on the other hand, our culture has been hollowed out to a much greater degree than the American culture has in general. So I think that we might be more susceptible, perhaps, to these ideas of that the woke produce. But I don't think that we're necessarily further ahead on that curve necessarily.
One thing that came to mind, and I was going to mention in my rant a second ago, but I will now. There's this meme going around, and I think sometimes people post it with the best of intention, so I'm not aiming this at anybody, but I hate it. And it's the thinking that we've got to fix. And there's this little girl, and she's all dirty from like playing in the dirt and doing tomboy stuff, which is fine. But the meme says, why raise a princess when you can raise a warrior? First, I find it cringy, but second, it just hurts my soul that so many of our people don't get it. Because and just a one-on-one comparison, princess is more valuable than warrior. Just linguistically. One is elite nobility. One is cannon fodder. And we need that. And I'm not, as a guy, believe me, I'm not downplaying warriors. But because warriors are a dime a dozen and a princess is something special. And it's just misleading. Why raise your daughter to think that way? I tell you what, the lamest guys are much better warriors than the most elite female combat forces in the history of the world. Because it's a misplacement of their values. There's a lot of stuff women can do in a pinch. That's not a world I want to see. And for our ancestors, that was a horrible idea. You knew everything was at its most desperate and falling apart if you had to enlist your females into warfare. If you're at that point where your ladies are having to fight, then your men haven't done their job right. And that's, by all means, do what you have to out of desperation. But that's not the world we want to build. I don't ever want my daughter to have to put her life in the balance in combat. That's not what I'm raising a daughter for. And if she finds herself in that spot, it's because I and later her husband have done a poor job of taking care of her. It's so wrongheaded. And I'm working very hard, and I think a lot of us are, to make sure that that changes and our women don't have to post the same ridiculous meme when they grow up. Our next question, has anyone have an opinion of Erth Hager? I have no idea who that is, so I have no opinion of them. Eric, do you know who this person is?
Not in great detail, but I do know of him. I think he is he's from Iceland, and he runs a YouTube channel where he talks about I'm not necessarily wanting to say Asatru because it's quite he talks around Asatru, at least I would say. I believe that he may be an archaeologist or something like that, but I have a low opinion of him because he is not on our side. He is not he's not focused, and I'm not entirely sure if he's actually religious or not. That he might just be sort of studying the ruins of the past and sort of making conjecture and things like that. But yeah, I have a low opinion of him, but I haven't watched his stuff in years.
Yeah, I wish I could give you more, but this is the first I've heard of him, so I really don't have much to add. Over on Entropy, we have a $5 donation from Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah. And it comes with a question. A couple of months back, you mentioned that the leading cause of death in the AFA was suicide. Recently, I went through suicide prevention training for my job. Do our Gothar do training to recognize the warning signs and for counseling? Yes, a couple of things on that. First, not nearly enough, and I would love to do more and incorporate more of that. We had a member for a time who was employed in the mental health industry as a psychologist, and she did training with our Gothar on that. And it was a one and done. So, I mean, that doesn't count as like ongoing training for all of our Gothar. But we did have her speak to us about that because it was such an issue. And that was valuable. I would like to continue training on that. When I say we have no training on that, no, we don't have the formal workplace training like you're mentioning, or any kind of specialized counseling training on that. What we do have from training is the 28 years of Gothic practice in the AFA, which I can't speak for the time before I was ordained, but now I got to sit here and math. I've been a Gothi for 11 years now. And in that time, easily, I don't know, 60% or more of my job is counseling. So what we do have is the shared experience of all of our Gothar in life and in counseling. One of the big points that I make, and I don't mean this nearly as I don't know, pessimistic as it may come across, but in the counseling, there's two levels of value. There's the first level of how best to help this person and trying to help them as best they can. But win, lose, or draw through the counseling experience, you are much better prepared the next time this kind of situation happens. And that's something that we've tried to get the maximum benefit out of figuring out what's worked and what hasn't, things that we can tighten up and get better on, warning signs that some of us have noticed that maybe others aren't familiar with. That's one of the biggest strengths of our Gothar is we have all of our shared experience that we talk to each other about with people in so many different walks of life, with so many different experiences that we can draw on each other for strength that way. And in that sense, we do have training on those kind of things often. I would like to get some more formalized training in specifically suicide prevention and like recognition of those kind of signs. But yeah, that's something at the forefront of our mind, and counseling is probably the biggest single component of our mentorship program in the Gothar training. Next up, what were the comments? I'm gonna beat someone to the obvious question: which of our virtues does Queen Sigríð best represent? Well, I already said earlier, I think that she represents fidelity, in the sense that she is loyal to our gods and loyal to herself and her sense of worth in these situations. But Eric, what do you think of our noble virtues that she most embodies?
Oh, you beat me to it. I was also going to say that obviously, as you've talked about it, fidelity comes to mind. I think is very, very clearly the case, that she remains true to the gods, to the Aesir. And like you said, she is also true to herself and true to her worth and true to her responsibilities as this noblewoman, as this mother of kings. But I also think that, tangentially at least, that she exemplifies honor, in that she is dishonored by, from her point of view at least, from these suitors who are not worthy of her and are not well mannered, and she gives retribution and rights this wrong, and thus so also with Olaf, as he disrespects her and dishonors her. She goes after him and uses all her cunning and intellect, and also biding her time, and not just, she doesn't lash out at him. She just calmly explained to him that might be your bane, Olaf. Like, your display here might end up spelling the beginning of your end, and she does bide her time, and she manages to get these three powerful, willful men to do her bidding and go and seek out Olaf and defeat him in battle greatly, and have him fling himself into the sea with his armor on, and have him sink to the bottom of the water. So I think that she also exemplifies honor.
Absolutely. Next, first, before we get to questions, Ronald, thank you so much for again donating tonight. You donate every time I see you on here. It's much, much appreciated, and I want you to know that. Thank you. From the Wolf Throne, has the AFA gotten any Shield Maiden types? And Shield Maiden types. Sorry, I was doing the air quotes outside the camera screen. If so, how do you convince them to drop the Viking Warrior Act and become more traditionally feminine? That is it's a good question, and it's a deep question. We get that much less often now. We used to get that all the time. I will say this. It is hard sometimes with that, with a lot of these things, with a lot of the mental illness that distributes itself within our folk. It's easy to find it cringy, to find it embarrassing, to find it funny, or to find it disgusting. Once you get past all of those initial reactions to it, it's very often heartbreaking. in my time, the women that I have known that claim to be shield maiden, Valkyrie warriors are very, very broken and damaged women that have often suffered tremendous abuse in their life. And so they've created this pretend persona that maybe if they push it hard enough and if they Viking LARP hard enough, maybe they can convince you, and I think vicariously convince themselves that they are strong and powerful women, when in reality they are very weak and very broken women. You ask how we convince them to put down the LARP and stop being Xena Warrior Princess and try to embrace femininity. And I don't think convincing them is a way to go, because I think they immediately dig in their heels and become attached to the thing you're trying to get them to break free of. The biggest thing you can do to validate their shield maidenness is to try to get in a fight or an argument with them. And then in their mind, you're two dudes arguing. In reality, you're not. You're somebody that is putting a very damaged woman in a position where she goes all in embracing her damage. The best thing I've seen is to not acknowledge the nonsense, to praise and celebrate the femininity when it happens, and to do the best that we can externally to build for them a place where they can let their guard down, where they don't feel like they need the coping mechanism, and where they can just be girls and be happy with it. And I've seen that work really well. If you refuse to treat them as shield maidens and you still treat them like ladies, it has an effect. And over time, it has an effect. And if we structure the environment to where we incentivize that by celebrating it, by treating them a certain way, and we de-emphasize their shield maiden nonsense, and we don't celebrate that, we don't clap for it and cheer for it, we ignore it and move on and put the emphasis on the things that we do value, people are social creatures, and they start coming around to the peer pressure of the room they're in on how to act right. We've all heard our whole lives about all the bad things peer pressure does. It has the potential to do some really good things too. So let's focus on ways that we can peer pressure folks into being healthy, peer pressure folks into being happy and fulfilled, peer pressure folks into being their very best version of themselves they can be. And I say that, please, anyone listening to this, peer pressure me into being my best self. I will thank you for it, I promise. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that something that you run into in your travels, Eric?
I would say that I don't run into it as much as maybe you guys have been in America. I think that it is a phenomenon that is less prevalent in Europe. It seems to be more of a thing in the US, and maybe it's I think that a lot of it has to do with these sort of TV shows like Vikings and things like that, is what I would guess, at least. But I don't think that is not the TV shows that make these women want to be men. But like you said, it's because that they are damaged, and I think that they haven't been protected in their lives as they've grown up. So they've had to sort of take on this very aggressive pseudo male role to defend themselves, really, and sort of put out their barbs. And I think, well, like you said, when you don't engage in this behavior because they want you to engage them in sort of this arguing or this fighting, is because that's how the way they know how to deal with people, is to be aggressive and fighting. But when you don't indulge them in that, I think you give them an opportunity to soften and lower their defenses and sort of go back to their authentic femininity. It doesn't mean that is something that's going to change someone overnight, but it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Our next question, Mr. Lugnet. Happy to see you here. Hail. Being in Sweden, do you feel that Sweden is special and closer to our gods? Are you seeing an awakening of our folk and our religion in your country? Thanks.
Okay, so that's sort of two questions, I suppose. I'll start with the first one. Yes, I think that Sweden is special. I think every country is special, and people might be, or some people at least might be, surprised. I've given this a lot of thought recently, actually, that I will say that Sweden is not closer to our gods. Yes, we may have a longer history than if we compare to the US of practicing Asatru, just in Europe in general, of course. But I don't think that you can say that a Swede practicing Asatru in Sweden versus an American practicing Asatru in the US, that the Swede is closer to the gods than the American. I don't think that that's how that works. I think that relationship, because it is a relationship, it's not, there are energies and powers to be found in different places, but the relationship is between us and our gods and our ancestors, and that transcends whether we are on one side of the planet or the other side of the planet. So actually, I don't think that we're closer to our gods in Sweden, and I think it is sort of a trap both for Europeans on the one hand, but also for Americans on the other hand, that don't, as Americans, don't denigrate or look down on the fact that you are in America and you're not. It is not that you have this idea that it is not as authentic as me being in Sweden and practicing Asatru. We're both practicing Asatru. Both the American and the European is practicing the same Asatru, and it doesn't matter where you are. I think you run the risk of sort of exotifying Europe, which is it doesn't help anyone, and I think for us Europeans that we run the risk of sort of developing sort of an elitist mindset that we are the actual Asatru, because we are in these ancestral homelands and worshiping, and so the for instance, Americans will never be as close to the gods as we ever will be, and I don't think that is true. And it, for us in Europe, it invites us to become complacent and comfortable because we get things for free. So no, I don't think that we're closer to the gods in Sweden or Europe in general.
There's a couple of things I'd like to throw in there that I think is important. First, I think that any of us who've been involved in this online in any way for any amount of time have seen the arrogant Europeans, telling us how wrong we are about stuff. I'd like to point out that, how old are you, Eric?
I'll be 31 in September. Yeah, this month.
All right, so I may be one generation closer to our most ancient Asatru ancestors than Eric. But regardless of that, I mean, that's the thing. We are from the same stock. Asatru being an ethnic faith, white folks in America or white folks in Europe are just as far chronologically from ancient practitioners of Asatru, if that's, if that's even a valid thing to go by. But directionality isn't, and that's silly. Are the Vikings less authentically Asatru than folks on the steppe migrating towards Scandinavia? It's, you can take that back to a really silly degree. One thing that I have noticed in the times I've been fortunate enough to go to Europe, it's a really special thing that folks in Europe are close to very ancient sacred sites. And they're very close to a part of history to where folk weren't estranged from our gods. That's really special. And I am as, giddy of a tourist over there as anybody else on getting to see these things because they're special and they're amazing. I think that in modern times that has led to a certain laziness amongst European pagans in general, because they feel like they have some proprietary relationship because they're next to some decayed stones that, their 1000th great grandfather worshipped in. What I think is a benefit, and if they weren't lazy on it and they used that as something as a building block to build off of, it's a tremendous advantage. What I've noticed with American Asatru, or Asatru as pioneered and practiced most often by Americans, is they didn't have that luxury. Like if you look back at Steve McNallen and his, all of the steps that he took between 1968 and today on developing our faith, without having that luxury, it makes us hungrier. It makes us try harder. Whereas we didn't have sacred spaces around us, we've built sacred spaces within us, in our minds and in our hearts. We're just now to a point where we're building sacred spaces in the world. But I think it's led to a lot more, enthusiastic practice and development because our people started out, wanting it more. But yeah, we have a couple more questions that are kind of along a similar theme here. But first, Eric, I know you, this is from Tracy. Eric, I know you live in Sweden, but it would be wonderful to finally meet you. Is there any plans of you coming to visit the United States?
So I don't have any concrete plans as of now. I would need to sort of build up a budget so I'd be able to afford to be able to do that. And there were some preliminary plans earlier this year, but with the arrival of my second daughter, there really wasn't logistically and time-wise space for me to do anything to make a visit to the United States. And sorry, Matt, if I can go back, because I think the question that we were talking about earlier, it was a two-parter. Can I go back to that? Because
of course you can. Hey, you are our special guest on here. They get to hear me every week. Please feel free. Chime in on anything you want. Throw in extras, and of course you can go back.
Yeah. So Europa, the last battle. His second question was: are you seeing an awakening of our folk and our religion in your country? Thanks. So I would say yes. I think that I am proof of that. Being folk builder over here, so I think that there is a awakening. But parallel to this awakening, there is also this, I guess, pseudo awakening where you have these people who, again, watch these TV shows about cool Vikings and Hollywood productions, and decide that, oh, this is sort of a cool thing, and it will make me special, and I can dress up in a silly manner, and it gives me justification to go shopping for trinkets and odds and ends on different Viking websites or whatever. So yeah, I think that we're seeing a general awakening in Europe, but really over the entire planet, where you can find our folk. It's just that you have to sort of differentiate that between the sort of fake awakening that comes with it.
All right. And I skipped a question. Githya Anna asks, what's Matt drinking? So I am getting my seasonal pumpkin beers, and I'm drinking Dark of the Moon by Elysian. They do a pretty good job. This one is a pumpkin stout. We will see what I pull out of the grab bag next. I'll let you know. This is the first two that I've had, have both been this, and I like it. I recommend it. Also from the Wolf Throne, I see the Streamly question has yet to be asked, so I shall ask it this time around. Matt and Eric, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for asking. I am doing fantastic. A number of things. So first, I'm having a good week all around. I am doing really well. I've got something that I'm pretty excited about that I want to surprise you guys with, that's in its development, that I'm not gonna hopefully in a month or so I'll be able to share with you guys a little bit, but I've got stuff I'm excited about. Things are going good. My daughter's doing awesome. AFA's doing well. And I'm sitting here, talking to you guys, which I really enjoy doing and I look forward to every week. And I am buoyed by my Elysian pumpkin stout. So I'm doing all right. Eric, how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, just taking into consideration that I've maybe, I don't know, slept 2 hours this last 24 hours, I'm doing very well. I'm really enjoying spending time here, talking to you, Matt, and talking to you guys, watching the stream. Very, very good questions, and I like the discussions that we get up to.
Okay, so question: if funds weren't an issue and you were traveling to the United States and you were aiming at one of our Hofs, which Hof would you most like to visit?
Wow, that's that's a really tough one. But I think I would want to pick Odin's Hof, actually. I think that would be my first stop, and my second stop I think would be Baldur's Hof.
All right. Well, we're just about 2.5 hours away from Odenshof over here. We're going to move to Sigerheim as soon as I can make that happen. But if you get over this way before then, you and your wife always have a place to stay. I said that your daughters have a place to stay too. If they want, we're not going to make them sleep outside. It'll be good. But yeah, we'd certainly love to see you guys wherever you end up if you are able to make it over. Next question, and this is a multiple part question, so I'm going to try to ask them individually. Mr. Lugnet, what are your 5 favorite books? I assume they're not necessarily Asatru related or don't have to be.
Yeah, so I actually came prepared because I actually have physical books, so I can actually sort of entertain the stream. So I've been looking through my library. So people who know me will know that I am obsessed with everything nature related. So now that we have autumn is in full force, one of my favorite things to do in autumn is to forage, and I love to forage mushrooms. So I have this Swedish book on mushrooms, so Nya Svampboken, which translates to the new mushroom book. So this is specifically targeting edible mushrooms. So this is being read quite a lot, and my older daughter, likes to pick mushrooms as well and look through the book and see if she can find the mushroom she had picked. I also like this. It's a collection of essays by Pentti Linkola, which he was, I guess you'd say, eco-philosopher, perhaps, biologist, and just trying to protect and educate people on practices that harm the natural world. So I recommend that. It can be grim reading though, so you should have that in mind if you're easily disturbed. I have here a book on bumblebees. So this is Humlor I Sverige, so it's bumblebees in Sweden. I am incredibly fascinated by bumblebees. They are incredible creatures. So I during summer when they're active, I like going out and trying to identify as many bumblebees as I can. They're our friends, and we need to take care of them. Here I have a book, a fiction book. So this I guess is more towards sort of young adults. So this is De Röda Jägarna, or the original title is The Running Foxes, I believe. So it's by Joyce Stranger. So she I don't think she's still alive, but she was a UK author. So this is about follows the life of a few fox pups in the countryside of the UK. Pulls at the heartstrings, so just beware of that. And I don't have a physical copy. I couldn't find my physical copy of it, but I also really enjoy The Botany of Desire by Michael Pollan, where he talks about, he's an American, and he talks about the history of different plants that have been very important for humanity. And one of the things that he talks about is apple trees, and it's very fascinating reading about the apple tree and how it became sort of a cultural icon in America, specifically with the fresh warm apple pie on the windowsill in American homes is iconic. Of course, it's also a book that I really enjoy.
First, awesome. Show and tell is great. Everybody who is invited on this program, please feel very welcome, if not pressured, to bring show and tell items, because it's a nice personal touch, and I think that's fun, and I appreciate you having those at the ready. What is your favorite saga?
It's the Volsunga saga.
Why do you prefer the Volsung saga over the Nibelungenlied?
I've always just been sort of I don't know if I would say mesmerized by it, but it just speaks to me in a very particular way. Just the heroics of it all. It's difficult to explain. It's been a while since I enjoy listening to it on audiobook, but it's been a while now. So I don't know. It just speaks to my heart.
Excellent. And what is, doesn't really say favorite, so pick a hobby. What is one of your hobbies?
I guess I can go back then to foraging for mushrooms. I really enjoy that. It might be an addiction at this point.
We used to have little Japanese ladies when I grew up in Anchorage with the white gloves. They had white gloves and like white sun visors, and they'd always be out on the bike trails and whatever else, wandering around in the woods, getting whatever mushrooms they could get. Do you guys eat a lot of that in your home? Mushrooms that you've foraged?
Yeah, we do. So one of my daughters, older daughter, her favorite pastimes now, she's almost 3 years old, is she wants to go out in the forest and pick mushrooms, and she immediately tells me that, okay, now we need to go home and we need to fry up these mushrooms. And it's been a while, sometime now, that we have more or less been eating like mushrooms every single day. So she just doesn't tire of them. She will just eat them until she bursts.
That sounds delicious. And the follow up to that question, or the bookend on it. Thanks for being with us at such a late hour. Much appreciated. Seriously, it is not convenient at all for you to be on the program. We're very, very glad that you're on here. I know a lot of people are excited to talk to you. I'm happy to talk to you. Thanks for getting up so early or staying up so late, whatever the case might be, to be on the program. Nick says, you mentioned certain places that have heightened energies and spiritual power. This is for you, Eric. What are some of the places around that you've been to? What was it like? How did it feel?
So I don't actually know the one place that comes to mind. This was sort of my early spiritual explorations into Asatru. When I was not living here, I was living further south, about 6 hours south, and I was exploring out in nature. Really, I was just picking berries and doing things like that. I just enjoy being outside and being out in the woods. And I found this place, and it has there are no signs. There's nothing, no trails, nothing there. But it was this sort of large circular sort of area, a pretty big area, where it's just covered with these round rocks. So it's like this place where nothing really grows. It's just a bunch of rocks, as if someone has taken rocks and just placed them very deliberately in sort of a circle, but like a filled circle. So there are a bunch of stones there, and in the middle of all these stones, there grew an old tree, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was a mountain ash, and that was one of the places. It might have been the place where I actually performed my first blute, like my first proper blute. I don't remember who it was. It might have been to Balder, but that place felt very, very otherworldly. It felt as if it wasn't quite there, that it was also somewhere else. But like I said, I didn't see any signs or anything, and no trails that would like point out like, oh, so like someone has built this, or this is some old site. It was just out in the woods by a motor road, really, and it's just very, very strange. And it felt as if I'd stumbled across this very secret place that no one else knew about. So I don't know what that place was about, but that's the place that comes to mind, really. So when you're this far up north, we don't have as many. We don't really have like what you would find in, for instance, Uppsala, where you have burial mounds, and you have further down, you have rune stones and things of that nature. We don't have that really this far north, but we do have remnants of Stone Age villages up here, and we actually visited one this summer, and that was interesting. It's a very it's been accommodated for tourism. It's not a very frequented place, but it's accommodated for tourism, and there's a lot of signs, and they've made a lot of reconstructions and things of that nature. And really, the places themselves, it's just these big holes, more or less, in the ground where the scientists will say that, oh, these people had their hut, and then next to the hut they had their large bonfire or their fire pit. So it's a bit, it can be a bit difficult to see that. I mean, they have their reconstructions, but how accurate those are, I'm not entirely sure. But it's been interesting visiting those types of places. I've never been to really burial mounds or runestones or anything like that. I haven't traveled very far in Sweden, but it would be interesting to go and do that and see what it feels like to be in places like that.
So we have a question over on Entropy, accompanied by a $20 donation. Thank you so much for that. From the Sons of Ivaldi. It's time to grow that beard, Matt. Make it long and strong by Yule. We'll see. It is just about that time coming up at winter finding, or the fall equinox. I always like to, it's a thing with me. I can't decide. By this time, I'm itching to grow a beard again and excited to see how it comes in. And this may seem stupid, but every year I kind of, out of curiosity, see how much gray comes in. I only get gray on my sideburns. It starts coming in, and then in this portion of my beard, it'll come in. So I'm always kind of curious how that progresses year to year. So I look forward to it, and then in the spring, I'm getting tired of it, and I just want it gone. I want to be clean shaven again. So I've developed the tradition of equinox to equinox. I keep a beard or keep clean shaven. So be letting it grow out again starting on 21st of this month. I don't let it just go to see how far it'll go in 6 months. I like to keep it a little bit more trimmed up than that. For anybody who might be curious, and I apologize for those that could care less, I usually take the clippers, and I've got like setting 2. I'll run 2 up my sideburns. I'll stagger it and do 4, then 6, and then on the goatee section will be at 8. But that's my beard strategy. I saw there was some discussion of that over in the comments. Also, Human Manipulation Nation, you got to train up. You got to train up if you're going to keep up. That said, our next question is from Gothi Jason Plurd. Eric, when you come to visit Njordhof, will you be bringing more Laponia? And can you tell people what Laponia is if they don't know?
Oh, it was a beverage that I brought over when we came over to Thorfest. So it's a liquor that is flavored by cloudberry, which is the greatest berry, and no one can convince me otherwise. It is a magical berry, really, that I brought over as a gift for Thorfest. And yes, Jason, I would be happy to bring more of that along, and I maybe I can also bring some Brennivin for the Hawkarl that we had at Thorfest as well.
All right. Our next question. Good morning, Eric. Is there a particular god or goddess you feel closest to? If so, why?
Yeah, I suppose it is starting to be morning here now. So good morning to you as well, Trent. Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, actually. And I sort of feel like oftentimes it's a standard answer to give, like Odin or Thor. But I think that for a large portion of my life, I've been, without knowing it, really been close to, I guess, the temperament of Thor. I'm a very passionate individual, and my passion can sort of sometimes get the better of me, and I can sort of fall into it and have sometimes trouble getting back out of it. But I've actually been thinking lately that I'm starting to feel a closer connection to Balder, actually, the Bright. And I'm still sort of investigating why that is, but I think that I am sort of leaving behind, like if I used to be a secular atheist, and I've also been a grandmaster at complaining about things, and I am as I've become, especially as I've become a folk builder, I'm leaving that part of life behind, and instead looking at things that I can do to make things better and build. And I feel that sort of falls in line with what Balder represents. That, you know, he is the pinnacle. He is the great light. He just all the dark is banished when he is around. And I feel that I'm sort of aligning more and more towards that, and sort of just, to me, Balder is joy and hope, and I'm feeling more and more of that as every day goes by.
Excellent. That said, I would really love to see you be able to get out and see Baldershof someday. It's very inspirational, and there's just something different about approaching one of our gods in their very own Hof. It's really a special thing. The next question up, and I'm going to let you start first on this. Where do you see our folk in the future? Will we see a fall of the West? Has it already happened? Or do you think the reality of the situation is exaggerated? It's a lot of questions, but I think it's basically one question.
So we're in sort of a depression as it relates to our folk. So things, we're on the precipice, I think, of seeing things getting better. Now, whether that precipice is going to be a decade or several decades or 100 years, I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows. I do think that we've been, our people have been living life in a way where we have been robbing from the future to sort of fuel our hedonistic pleasures of the now. Unfortunately, the generations before us have done so, and I mean, we're also complicit in it as we grow up. But so I think that our society is living on borrowed time. The society as it stands right now, I don't think that we're going to see a complete dissolution of our people, but things are going to change, and things need to change, because I think that the people who are watching this, to one degree or another, agrees that the way society is run now is not healthy and is not right or just. So we do want it to be switched out with something that is good and that is healthy for us. But in order for that to happen, these paradigms that we've been living with for a very long time, they need to be dismantled, and they're falling on their own, as they're not rooted in reality, and they're not rooted in what is right and just. They're rooted in entropy and destruction and really the dishonoring of that which is actually good. So I think it is. I don't think it has happened. I think it is happening all around us. And on the one hand, I think the situation is exaggerated, but on the other hand, it's not exaggerated. I think it is, when people take it as, oh, we can't do anything, everything is hopeless, then I think, no, that is incredibly exaggerated, and it's not rooted in reality. It is rooted in propaganda that these bad actors are pumping out, and you need to stop watching that propaganda. That is a huge issue with with people. And I think it's part of the soul sickness. We're just drawn to looking at all the bad news of the world. It's like, oh, look what happened in Sweden here and what happened in America here. That you need to stop watching that. Like you will be hearing about it anyways, but please make an effort in not consuming so much doom porn, really, because then it will make you think that that things are worse than they actually are. So stop doing that.
All right, you heard it here, folks. I'm going to steal it and I'm going to use it. Doom porn. I think that really does capture it accurately. Very seldom do we just see cataclysmic social change. We like to talk a lot, and it's kind of the big picture example is the fall of the Roman Empire. No one generation saw the empire fall. It fell for, depends who you talk to, but 300 or 400 years, depending where you were at. It's a slow process of change, and it's hard, asking people to predict the future is a difficult task. One thing my dad noticed about America is, he lamented that this is the first, my generation, and I assume my daughters would then be the second, it's the first generation that their kids weren't going to be better off than them. Like things weren't looking up. And I think that's interesting because he's, tends to be a more middle of the road conservative. He's not, really our guy on stuff. For him to see that is, he's always been super patriotic. He was a soldier. He was in the army. He built a career in the army. Always been really devoted to America, and to see that change in his life was interesting. Yeah, it's not going the right direction. Is it a fall? I don't know. Is it a deep valley that maybe we'll pull out of on the other side? Or is something going to break down and we're going to just build something different? I don't know. What I do know is the AFA is doing our very best to build a outpost of the golden age within the Kali Yuga. We're building the best we can amongst ourselves at our Hofs, at Sigerheim. We're continuing to grow and build a community and share with each other to where we're positioned to celebrate if everything goes great, or to take strength from one another and take care of each other if things go poorly. It's hard to tell if the reality of the situation is exaggerated. I think that's always something historians can do in hindsight, but you very seldom know at the time. We base tragedy on our own life experience. What's a big deal to you may not be a big deal to me. What's a big deal to me may not be a big deal to someone else who's lived a more stressful life, or a life where their immediate needs aren't met. There's a lot to be said to it. But what I have seen is the people that embrace the doom porn and do the whole prepper thing. Not that it's not wise to be prepared for certain things, but when you make your existence about preparing for the apocalypse and then it doesn't happen, it's a lot of wasted years, and it's a lot of wasted energy, a lot of wasted relationship and time with your family, and time you could have been doing stuff with your head focused up. It's funny how it's weird how these things come together on these shows and themes coalesce. But speaking of Balder and Baldershof, one of the things that I think is most special about the Vey and the mural is it's in kind of a triangular space, and Lord Balder's head is at the pinnacle of this triangle, and he's looking up, and it's everything there directs your attention upwards, looking to the future, looking to something better, looking to build and not looking down at all the things that are wrong, looking up towards things that we can become. And I think that getting your head up and looking for the positive is a much more healthy thing to do. And we've seen generations of people now. We've seen a couple of generations doing the whole prepper thing, where these old guys spend their whole life prepping for something, and then they pass and nothing's happened. And they've squandered a lot of things and a lot of time in order to do that. So I think focusing on what we can build and building it within the AFA is a very unique opportunity that we have in this day and age. It's pretty special. Speaking of show and tell, I've got the bottle of Laponia that you all gave me, and I only pull it out at special occasions because it is unique and not a product we get over here. But it is delicious. Skull. Next question, Eric. What is your favorite runestone? Good night, Obs. So, as an aside, it is amazing to me because in my mind, she is still this little 5.5 pound baby that she was born as. And it sneaks up on me every day how much of a little girl she's become. I'm used to having to go tuck her in or whatever. She just opened the door, said, "Good night, Daddy," and went on about her business. So she is growing up, and I'm proud of her. But back to the subject at hand, what is your favorite runestone burial mound, museum, ancestral ruin, etc., that you have visited in your country or abroad?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I haven't really visited any runestones or burial mounds. It's been a long time since I've last been in a museum, but I think I would have to say Naturhistoriska Riksmuseet, which is, I guess, the Museum of Natural History. But that's quite some time ago. That must be at least 20 years ago. I went there to Stockholm to see my maternal grandmother when she was still alive. But I have been to ancestral ruins, but they're not ruins that what most people would perhaps think of as ruins. But out here in the countryside up here, you will come across, if you're sort of aware and sort of looking for it, you can come across out in the forest, and you have these huge trees growing around everywhere. But you can see there's these rocks are sort of in a square formation here, and it means that there's been sort of an old homestead there. And it's most people just don't really give it a second thought and just walk past, and they're not that old, maybe 100, 200 years old perhaps. But when you stop and think about it, these are homes of poor farmers who couldn't afford to. These are usually found further away from the river that we live next to. They're further up in the forest because these were farmers who could not afford to live by the river, because the river meant wealth, because the river is filled with fish and salmon and trading opportunity. And the people who were of lower class, these poor farmers, couldn't afford to live next to the river, but were able to purchase land and live off in the forest. And through backbreaking physical labor, taming the land and getting rid of because we have a lot of our soil has a lot of different sized particles, I guess you could say. So there's a lot of rock, there's a lot of really, really large rocks, and these people, some of our ancestors would tame the land and plow like these small potato patches and remove these huge rocks, both men and women, and just eking out an existence out in nowhere, really. And I mean, they didn't have a choice, but just that power that they possessed, and that just taking on the struggles of life and making the best of it, It's just fascinating when you can just stop for a moment and just reflect on it a bit, and just look at these ruins, and remember that people used to live out here, and it used to be that they didn't have air conditioning or could just go to the mall and pick up their groceries. They would have to work very hard to be able to just stay alive.
I think that's important. I think we very often think of ruins or special places as having to do with the very ancient past, and that's not always the case. But I think we fantasize about things we don't have. In the United States, if things are old, I mean, if they're very old, they're, maybe a Spanish fort from 1500s. They're, that's about as old as you can get in the Americas. Certainly for any of our ancestral things. So it's hard, and it's always, you think about Europe, you think about the very ancient past because stuff we don't have. Angelina, do children count as show and tell items, or maybe pets? Yes, they both count. They absolutely count, and we would love to see them, especially pets. Children too. Maybe you need to mute the mic. I don't know. We'll see. They can. It depends on what kind of mood they are in. But yes, those are always welcome on the program. Obsidian Skull asks, what is the status of Asatru in Sweden? Why doesn't it have government support? And has the issue been raised before the authorities?
So it's been a while since I looked this up, but so status of heathenry. I mean, like Matt has talked about a lot on this show, like we don't identify as heathens, we're Asatru are, but if we're just sort of counting ourselves to that group, I suppose, just for the question's sake. I mean, there are several quote unquote heathen groups in Sweden, and they're not banned from practicing or anything like that. And I think a few of them might enjoy some financial support from the government, which I don't think that they get a lot. For the AFA specifically, I think, unfortunately, I think last time I checked at least, that we wouldn't be able to be recognized as an official sort of religious organization or church in Sweden, as we exclude on certain criteria that you're not allowed to exclude on in Sweden, unfortunately. And I don't think that this issue has been raised before authorities, really, because we're very much a minority as it is right now, at least as folkish Asatru are, and we haven't really been, for a few exceptions or for a few times, we haven't really been organized to such a degree that we've needed to go to the government to ask for anything. But I would say that the heathenry doesn't really have a particular status in Sweden, but I wouldn't say that it's being suppressed in any way, really. But our folkish Asatru is I believe hampered by the way Swedish politics looks like today.
All right. Matt, how often do you go to the gym, and what does your workout routine consist of? It depends. I like to keep fresh as far as workout routine goes, so I change that up every 8 weeks is misleading. Every 8 cycles. So it depends. Some of my routines are 4-day split. Some of them are 5. But every 8 rounds of that, I change to a different routine. I've got about 10 or 12 that I cycle through. I go to the gym every single day. Life, I learned this. I forget what source or where I heard it from or whatever, but it's been sound wisdom for me. Rest days, life gives you rest days. Rest days happen whether you want them to or not. You get sick, you're traveling, stuff comes up, whatever. So I don't schedule in rest days. I go every single day, and every now and again a rest day happens. But yeah, assuming I'm here in town, I go every day. So I'm trying to think of, okay, as I've gotten older and my joints are less good, I do a lot more machine work and less free weight work. I don't necessarily advise that to everybody, but as you get older and your joints break down on you, it allows me to do stuff that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise due to my old man joints. It all depends. I have some routines that are a little bit higher volume and some that are lower volume as far as reps go. Today I did biceps, chest, and calves. And no particular reason. Sometimes I mix them up and do, a push-pull like that. Other times I'll do stuff that synchronizes and it'd be chest, triceps, and shoulders or whatever. It all just depends on that routine that I have. Today I think I did 4 sets of 12 on the donkey calf raise machine with the pads on your shoulders. I did another 4 sets of 12 on dumbbell calf raises. I did tricep extensions on the rope, like the pull down machine. I did, or I guess the cable crossover machine. I did preacher curl, standing curls with the cambered bar or the preacher bar. I did rope pulls also in that cable crossover machine. I did cable crossovers. I did again, most of these are 4 sets of 8 outside of the calves. The calves were 12. Everything else was sets of 8. I did cable crossovers. I did hammer strength flat presses and hammer strength incline presses. And I did the bar dip machine because I can put more weight on that. I also, at a different day of the week when I'm working, I think shoulders anyways, a different day of this routine, I do weighted dips on a regular, dip bar, but I use the dip machine for that today. But that's what I got going on right now. Next question, Eric. Whilst out foraging, have you come across any arrowheads, pottery, grinding stones, or any other ancient artifacts?
No, I've not personally ever come across that, but I've heard of people who have found sort of ancient artifacts. I think that this is a while back, but the head of an axe from what is likely the Stone Age was found quite some time ago, but not very far from me, maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes away from me, up on a sort of a ridge, an old ridge. And I believe, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was on my parents' property or close to my parents' property that an old parts of an old crossbow was found in the potato patch when they were plowing. Yeah, so, an unexpected find, but no, I have never found any ancient artifacts personally.
All right, now we've got a monetized questions coming in from Odyssey for 16 credit donation. I don't really know how to translate Odyssey credits, but we appreciate it very much. From Barry, I have been recently trying to convert after a near-death experience, put a lot of things into perspective. and I've been trying to learn everything I can about the Aesir and our folk. Here in Ohio, I seem to be at a loss for the next step past reading and listening. Is there anything you guys could suggest? First, what would you suggest, Eric?
Well, I think Barry is sort of answering his own question, perhaps without knowing it. But you're saying at a loss for next steps past reading and listening. I mean, I think your next step is getting out and meeting folk. And I mean, if you're in the Ohio area, I mean, you have a lot of people in Ohio that you could network with. So really, you should be reaching out and making steps towards meeting up with people and building relationships.
Absolutely. So you're fortunate. You live in Ohio. Ohio is, I'm trying to think, I put out our monthly numbers. I think Ohio is it's tied for third as far as the most AFA members in a state. Got a lot of activity in Ohio. Ohio, or very far western Pennsylvania, is what will eventually be the site of Phrasehof. And that's our next Hof. It's the Hof we're currently working towards. You are positioned really well. We've got a lot of members there. That's the next step. There's only so much you can do as far as, and if you look at the screen, and just in case you're listening to this, Joe Drotos and Mike Melillo, JDROTOS at runestone.org, or MELILLO at runestone.org. Those are two of our folk builders in Ohio. They would be happy to talk to you and help you get set up if you'd like to attend something. That's absolutely the next step you should do. Like I said, there's a lot of activity there, a lot of members there. You have to come to a point where it's not about studying, it's about doing and participating. And hopefully your study enhances that. But if you never do that, then you're not practicing Asatru, you're learning about Asatru. And it's sounds like it's time for you to take the leap and at least visit and see and observe and interact as much as you feel comfortable doing. But that's absolutely what you should do. And again, you can just show up and observe and see what it's about and ask questions and take it slow. But the next thing that you have is going out and actually meeting somebody. And just to some things I'm seeing in the comments, Gothi Plurd, your lack of Laponia, my swig of it was absolutely a flex aimed in your direction. And I stand by that. And I chuckle at your Laponia drought. Mr. Lugnet, when can we expect an AFA Hof in Sweden? What god would you want to honor with it? And what needs to happen to make it a reality? Thank you.
Yeah, very, very good questions. I don't know when we can expect an AFA Hof in Sweden. Just to be sort of sober and realistic about it, it's quite far off still. Matt has talked about this in previous shows as well. In order to have a Hof, you need to have a membership that supports it. So you need to have the numbers. You need to have enough members to justify sort of having a Hof that, okay, we have people here who are dedicated to the AFA and they're dedicated to one another and they meet up and they're building frith with one another. And so we need to have a Hof here as well. Then you also need to have the leadership that are able to maintain and take care of the Hof and honoring the Hof through taking care and maintaining it, honoring that Hof, because you must not forget that it's not just a structure, it is a temple to a god or goddess, and you need to show reverence towards that, and showing reverence is taking care of it and maintaining it and being able to to have ceremony and ritual and blot at it regularly for years and years and years to come. So just a sober look on it, we're quite far away from that when it comes to Sweden still. I am 100% convinced that it will be happening someday. I just don't know when that day will be coming. It might be coming much sooner than I think or much later than I think. But it's not up to me, so I don't really need to worry about it.
Well, you know, we would love to see that. So, for perspective, yes, Sweden's still a long way, but it is the most active country in the AFA outside of the United States. It's got by far the most members outside of the United States. We had really good momentum there. We were even talking about, you know, getting a Hof there earlier on before the whole world shut down due to COVID-19, and that really slowed a lot of things down. But at that time, we had a very thriving AFA membership in southern Sweden. So we're working on rebuilding that and regrowing our folk over there. Every point Erik made is absolutely spot on. We need the people to fill seats and make it a worthwhile thing to do. We also need the leadership structure if people are going to be devoted to it, take care of it, do all the hard work that having a Hof entails. And so, you know, we're still a ways off, but it's certainly a dream of mine. It's something I want to see happen. So it will happen, like Erik said. Exactly when, that's the question, but it will absolutely happen. Our next question.
Sorry. Part of the question was also what God do you want to honor it with, and I don't know which God I would want to see the first Hof in Sweden to be dedicated to. I think it's still a bit far off enough that it hasn't really crystallized for me yet, and it might be that it won't crystallize until whoever decides who it's going to be dedicated to, it will be revealed by then.
All right. Next question, similar theme. Matt, would you like to see a Hof in your home state of Alaska? Uhlers Hof, perhaps? Or is Alaska too far from the rest of America for there to be a Hof there? Its geography to the rest of America does not make it not a thing. It does make it challenging because it means it needs to stand on its own, and it's not going to get other states surrounding it to supply it with congregants. I would love to see Uhlshof in Alaska. That's something I've wanted. That's something that has been a dream of mine. I would love to do it, but we need a membership there. Like, same thing with Sweden. It's a little bit easier because it's technically within the United States, even though it's very far away. But we need members. We need a healthy, stable membership up there, and we need leaders that are going to take care of it and maintain it and make it that's the thing with any of these Hofs. For the longest time, just getting one was such a daunting and impossible task. We're past that now. We know how to get them, and we can do that. The challenge now isn't getting them. It's getting them and maintaining them. Once we get a Hof, we make a commitment to a god or a goddess that we are going to maintain that place of worship for eternity. And that takes stability, and it takes a certain amount of redundancy. It can't be all on one person's back and then something happened and then we've got no one. Worse than not having a Hof would be to have a Hof to one of our gods and then have to sell it or have to see it go derelict and get boarded up and profaned. So when we get a Hof, we're making a commitment, and we need the redundancy and the people and the support system to make that a responsible thing for us to do. But yeah, I'm holding out hope. I hope there's a big resurgence up in Alaska. It would make me so happy to go home to my home state and dedicate a Hof to Uller. I would love to do that. If you know anybody, you got connections, tell them to sign up. We would love to get them on board. It's a good time to say that to anybody. If you are listening to this now or in the future, are you an AFA member yet? If not, why not? If you like what we're doing, if you are a heterosexual white person, you should join the Asatru Folk Assembly. We would love to have you participate in our amazing faith of Asatru and be part of our AFA family. We're doing great things. We're so much more effective if we're doing those things together under one roof, under one banner, united in our purpose. And we would love to have you be a part of it. We're doing great things. There's so much going on in the world that isn't the way we'd like, and we don't know what to do about it. At this stage in the development of Asatru, we are big enough that we are doing really cool things, but we're still growing, and we're small enough that every individual can have a huge impact on what we're trying to do together. So help us out, get on the team. We've got amazing things that we want to do, and we would love to have your help doing that. Our next question, Eric, I'm interested in learning Svenska. Do you have any tips for me? And do you have any thoughts on the differences and similarities between Swedish and English?
Oh, that's rough. That should really be a question for my wife, who's been forced to learn Swedish. And I'm very, very ignorant as it comes to like rules of grammar and things like that. Like I know how to speak, and I speak correctly most of the time. But I wouldn't be able to explain to you why. As many times as Laura has been learning Swedish, I will correct her, and she'll say, "Well, why? What's the grammatical rule for that?" I said, "I don't know. It's just wrong. What you said is just wrong, and I don't know why it's wrong, but I know it's wrong." So I'm really the wrong person to ask that. But really, I mean, with any language, really, speaking to a native speaker is the best way to learn, and especially if you're in a situation where you're really desperate to understand and have the other person understand you. That's going to make you learn. That will be the fastest way for you to learn, really, which might not be feasible for you. I don't know what your situation is, but I guess that's my tip. And thoughts on differences and similarities. I mean, obviously very, very similar languages, but I think that Swedish is more of a poetic language than English is. I feel that English is perhaps a more pragmatic, more mechanical language, whilst Swedish is more of a singing language almost. It's almost sounds like song when you're speaking, I think. So I'd say that's what sort of makes them different.
Yeah, I'm one of the things I'm always amazed by the times I've been to Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. All the Scandinavians speak perfect English, and I think Eric's advice is the best way to do it if you can, is to fully immerse yourself and drop yourself into where you have to communicate and work it out. I think that's going to get you there quicker and more efficiently than anything else. So again, thematically connected to our next question, this one from Gothi Bodhi Mayo. Eric, how long have you been fluent in English? And what other languages besides Swedish and English do you speak?
Fluent in English, so maybe from 10 years old, perhaps. And it wasn't school that taught me; it was video games that taught me how to speak English really well. And as to what you said, Matt, about Scandinavians being very very good at speaking English. I think that it's sort of in the culture that a lot of European countries, when it comes to media from the US or I guess also the UK, when you have TV shows and things of that nature where they speak English, many European countries have a tradition of dubbing and having someone voice over in the native language instead. But I think in the sort of trend in Scandinavia has always been that you keep the English audio, but you add subtitles to everything. So I think that Scandinavians are just grow up hearing English all the time, and I think it's even like the generations growing up now. That's even more the case because the world is connected to such a degree now through video games and social media that English is just second nature to most children, I think. So that's why it's difficult to learn Swedish in Sweden, because if a Swede will just start speaking English with you, you might need to find some really old people, like maybe a village further up north than even where I live, where you only have old people living and they only speak Swedish, or they might only speak Finnish. So then if you want to learn Finnish, then you should perhaps seek that out. So that sort of ties into the second part of the question, what other languages I speak. So I only speak Swedish and English, but I understand a little bit of Finnish, and I have ambitions to learn to speak Finnish. Would like to also speak some people would say that it's a dialect of Finnish, but I would, other people and me included, would say that it is not. So it's called meänkieli. So it's a I guess type of Finnish that it has been spoken up here where I live on the border, where sort of an old country Finnish, you could say. Finnish in its current iteration is has been sort of an academic project where they've sort of gathered Finnish from all over Finland and put it together into sort of a cohesive language. But you have places, and this is one of those places where some people still speak an old type of Finnish, and I would like to learn that and try to pass it on to my children as part of their heritage.
All right. Eric, do you like Swedish death metal and black metal?
Unfortunately, both of those genres is not really my thing. I can't really get past the vocals. I mean, some of it works for me, but it's just, I like clean vocals. It just doesn't do it for me. The vocals of death and black metal, unfortunately.
Just say no to the Cookie Monster vocals. All right. Matt, any update on Phrasehoff? Yeah. So updates on Phrasehoff. I've laid out that there's a couple of steps. So first step is we need to pay off Njordshof. It's always our thing when we're going to get our next Hoff, and it's not as exciting once we have an actual building there to pay it off, but that's what needs to happen first. That's the responsible thing to do, is we need to pay our debt for Njordshof. That said, I'm just going to pull up figures for you here. We are making really big progress on that. If you will consider that we got Njordshof in August of last year, so we're a year and 1 month from the purchase. We have I gotta look in at these little tiny numbers. All right, so we need to pay off $105,372.28 remaining on Njordshof. That said, we are way over half. That's huge progress in a very short amount of time. Nick threw up a graphic. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nick. If you are interested in helping us, if Nick can throw the donation link up, but we have donate at runestone.org. You go to our website. The donation thing is easy to find. Need everybody's help. If every single AFA member would donate $119, we would have that all paid off and ready to go today. So that's where we're at on that. The next step is to make sure we have, so we have it budgeted to where of the AFA's total income, 1/4 goes to the recurring costs of a HOF. So if that makes sense to you guys, like gas, electric, water, garbage, insurance, any kind of security system, all of those things, because we, like I said earlier, we're making a commitment to keep this HOF running. So the AFA overall income, all of our HOFs combined, we need to be able to pay for that with 1/4 of our overall income. That said, we have a certain income number we were looking at hitting per month on an average to make that feasible to get our next HOF. We are very close to that. It means we need to raise our monthly income by, I got that number for you here too. Hold on one second. By 3.1%. So it's not a lot. If everybody gave a little bit more, we would be doing all right. We will get there. I'm not worried about it. That'll be great. The other thing is, once we have that, we need to find a suitable property and start building up a war chest. By that, I mean we need to build up a surplus of funds to where we can put a down payment on something. I am silly and I get excited about these things. So like just this weekend, even though we're a ways out yet, just this weekend, I went and I started looking for what properties were available to us in the Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio area. Saw some really, really tempting places that will probably not be on the market when we're actually looking, but just to get a feel for the market, how much things are, what kind of availability there is. And there's a lot of really great options for us once we're ready to get there. So that's the progress we're making so far. And, it's an uncomfortable truth, but the faster and more you guys donate, the quicker we're going to get there and the more that's going to happen. But if we're all working together, many hands make light work, many wallets make, more reasonable donations to get us where we're trying to go. But thank you for asking on that. Eric, AFS or NRM or both?
I think the both is referring to both of us about our favorite sports team.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so AFS or NMR. So I'm pretty sure what you're referring to there, Green Leader, is so AFS is Alternativ för Sverige. So that is a political party, Alternative for Sweden, which is has been inspired by Alternativ for Deutschland, which is, I suppose, if you're looking at Swedish standards, quite a far right political party, and NRM being the Nordic resistance movement. So I am not very invested in politics in general. So I think that Alternative for Sverige and NRM, that they're two different organizations and they sort of have different goals and they operate in different ways. So if we're just looking at changing the political sort of landscape, I think that Alternativ för Sverige is the better bet. They've had some successes these last two elections, really, but not as much perhaps as they would have hoped. But I think that they're doing some good, and I'm absolutely not opposed to them, and I'm also not opposed to the Nordic resistance movement. But so I'm not very like I said, I'm not very invested in politics, and I really want to make clear that for me and for my family, what we're invested in is the AFA. That's like our number one thing for our family. And I think a lot of these other organizations, political organizations, I think we have a lot of that stuff, but we don't have the religious part. And you need to, it is my personal conviction that you need to start with the religious part and then build from that. That needs to be your foundation. If you're starting with the sort of the political, then you're sort of building a castle up on sand or a castle up in the air. It doesn't have anything to stand on. So I really don't really engage. Like I said, I don't engage in politics and things of that nature. And I honestly don't have much time when I'm being part of the AFA and being in leadership. It takes a lot of time for me. So I'm just putting in a lot of all the effort I can into the AFA and making that successful. So, but I'm not against Alternative for Sverige, and I'm not against Nordic Resistance Movement. I think both of them are doing good things, but they're sort of playing perhaps two different games, or they're in two different spheres. And I'll just go ahead and add my answer to the final question: favorite sports team. So I'm very, very against sports in general. I don't enjoy watching sports. I enjoy participating in physical activities myself. So I don't have a favorite sports team.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint. I really don't either. I don't mind watching sports. I don't have any skin in the game. It's not really something I follow or pay a lot of attention to. I think the last professional sport that I paid a lot of attention to, it's always fun to watch. It's just hard to find. It doesn't come on regular, and I used to enjoy watching it quite a bit, was rugby. I like rugby a lot. And, I'd be game to sit and watch some rugby, but, don't really have a team. USA rugby team is not really competitive with the good rugby teams out there. So yeah, I'm not that guy. I don't really have a favorite sports team or follow that regularly at all. And shoot, when I talk about watching rugby and really enjoying it, I'm talking, 8 or 9 years ago. Our next question: would it be good to consecrate a tree to be a public point of worship until you guys have a Hof there in Sweden?
I mean, I don't think that it is necessary. I feel like that would add sort of unnecessary complexity to it all. I mean, there are places where we will perform ritual and blot, and we have several places where we will do that, but we will also do it indoors at our altar. And I don't think that you need to go and find like a proper tree and then consecrate that tree, and then you go and just have a ritual at that particular. I just feel that it sort of just adds a layer of work and complexity that doesn't need to be there. I'm very much of the opinion that you don't need a specific place. Like, all you need is found within, and you can consecrate any place really for your needs as it comes to ritual and blood. So I don't think that is necessary. I think it adds another thing that you need to do before you can start practicing.
So what Erik said, absolutely, you can go and begin worshiping and approaching your gods without having a special tree or having a special, consecrated horg or any kind of outdoor sacred space to do that in. So everybody get out there and practice Asatru. Don't wait on something. That being said, sacred spaces are really important and really special. If in 2023 the best we can do is find a cool tree, we're not doing it right. So we want to get hofs. We want to have something special. We don't want to embrace and worship primitivism and sacrifice all of the work our ancestors did so that we can do ooga booga stuff. Now, if you found a tree that was special to you guys on property that one of you owned, then cool. That's nice to make it a sacred spot. My property up in Alaska that I had before I moved, we had a tree there that was kind of our special tree we made offerings at. I don't mean to think that the idea of that is silly, but for the entirety of Asatru practitioners in Sweden to get, to find a tree is, we can do better than that, and we will do better than that at some point here in the future. But until then, don't let not having a space like that prevent you from approaching gods. That gift cycle's got to be maintained. It's very important. It's fundamental to what we do. Looking over in the chat about sports teams, Rachel mentioned something about sports entertainment. Yeah, I like the sports entertainment here and there. I don't really have a sports team. You know what I'm saying? I don't like the football and the soccer. No, but I like the wrestling every now and again. Dig it? How does one move to Sigerheim? Is any AFA member allowed to move there? Also, am I correct that Sigerheim is entirely homestead and that Tiershof will be built there? So the first two questions are kind of one question. How does one move there, and is any AFA member allowed to move there? Theoretically, yes. But logistically, it's a big commitment. We are in a time and place where I've mentioned the soul sickness of our folk. We've got a lot of flakes. We've got a lot of members. Okay, so let's take this back. When I announced that we had Sigerheim in December, we had a whole lot of members there talk about how they wanted to move there. Half of those members are no longer members. It's been 6 months. So we've got a lot of flaky people. We certainly don't want to invest your life savings into a home and invest ourselves into a relationship that way until we know that that folks are truly committed to wanting to be a part of it. So that said, yes, technically anybody could move there in the AFA, but we would want to have confidence in some long-term loyalty and wanting to be a part of this. And it's something for you to think about too, is your home equity. You're not going to have the opportunity to just up and pull out and sell it to anybody. Selling it to another AFA member, sure, but it's not going to have the same value as if you wanted to put it on the open market to rando people. So it's a really important commitment. But yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, reach out to your folk builder, reach out to me, and we can start working towards making that a reality. There is space on there for people, and it is something we want to do. As of right now, the people that I'm counting on moving there are members of AFA leadership that have been involved for many years that, I trust aren't going anywhere. But that's only part of it. So the dream of Sigerheim isn't that 68 acres. That 68 acres is the core of Sigerheim, yes. We want to buy more surrounding territory as it comes up. We also, if you can get to Jackson County, Tennessee, everything is within about a half an hour of anything else in that county. You can be part of Sigerheim. You can be on Sigerheim every single day of your life if you want to. And you can still have a home scaled to whatever you would like to do. If you want acreage, if you want a small home, if you want to live in an apartment, whatever you would like to do, you can do that in Jackson County and still have the community of Sigerheim to where you can literally be there every single day if you want. You can attend every event there. You can sleep over there. You can do whatever you want, be part of it. And it's still part of that big village that we're trying to create. And if the more we can do in that county, the more we can be a significant group of people in the county, the more we can have a voice, the more we can be centralized, the more we can have that village that we're all trying to build. So don't be discouraged. Nothing I was saying was intended to be discouraging, but it also is, the dream is just getting close. You get close, it counts. And if you're serious about wanting to be on the property proper, do let us know. And that's not out of possibility. It's just we want to make sure there's some commitment there. Entirely homesteaded. I don't know what that means. So we are starting from a completely virgin piece of land there. It has water, electric, and fiber optic internet at the road, which is strange because it's kind of out in the sticks. So I'm really surprised all of those utilities are at the road. I think that's very fortuitous for us. But yeah, it's being, broke ground on fresh. So we are building fresh there, if that's what you're asking. And yes, Tiershoff will be there. We have a spot picked out up on the ridge line. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We've done 2 rituals there so far. We will continue to improve upon that space, make it sacred as we prepare to erect Tiershoff. But that's something else to keep in mind. We are not going outside of our regularly scheduled progression of Hoffs. Our commitment is to do things a certain way and at certain, budgeting points and certain plans. So we're doing things in an ordered and structured way. Our next step after we pay off Njordshof is to make Freyshof happen and then to pay off Freyshof. Once we have paid off Njordshof, once we have purchased and paid off Freyshof, then we will see about building Tiershof, but that will happen at Sigerheim. Our next question for Eric. Do you know about the Swedish runologist Lars Magnar Enochson? If you do, what is your opinion about him? And also, tell me how I pronounced that incorrectly.
No, I think you pronounced it pretty reasonably. So I wouldn't correct you really there. But I actually don't know about this runologist. I hadn't heard about him, so I don't have a particular opinion about him.
No, you are our Swede. You're on here. You are required to be an expert on every stone circle and holy site in Sweden and on all of the sons and daughters of Sweden that have produced works that have made it outside of your country. You are our one-stop ambassador to Swedish culture from the beginning until now. Okay. Eric, do you like the Swedish band Europe?
I mean, I know of Europe, and I mean, I've listened to some of their songs, but I wouldn't say that I listen to them really. It's not really my type of music. So
it's got cleaner vocals than that metal stuff.
Yeah. They do for sure. But I'm into metal, but I'm into metal that has clean vocals. So it's not. I think that they're good, but it's not music that I listen to very often.
Do you like Ace of Base?
Never heard.
Whoa. Letting us down as the resident Swede. Tell you what. All right. So our final question. Let me just check and make sure we don't have any sitting in the queue lingering over here on entropy, and we do not. So our final question. Thoughts on Jackson Crawford's translation of the Poetic Edda? Have you read or are you familiar with Dr. Jackson Crawford and his translation work?
I actually do have his translation. I got it before I knew about sort of his views on how we do Asatru. But I haven't read through it. I've just skimmed through it here and there, really. So I don't really have an opinion as to how good the translation is, really. But yeah.
Well, we have another question that popped up. And I'll say this too, as far as Dr. Crawford's translations, I'm sure that linguistically they're really well done. Something that I think is important to consider when translating, when doing anything, communication, language, writing, it's about communicating an idea or a set of ideas in a way and it's a two-way street. It's a way that is meaningful for the speaker or the writer and for the hearer or the reader. Just because you get all the words accurately doesn't mean that you convey the thought the same. And I say that to say this. If you are a pious Asatru, the tone and the way that you understand our lore is going to be very different than if you are coming from a scholastic linguist point of view. The meaning is going to be different, and the purpose of your translation will reflect that. That's one of the reasons that with Dr. Crawford being snooty about us, to say the least, with being negative towards the AFA, negative towards folkish practice of our faith, and negative to Asatru generally, I don't trust that his translation would be any better than some other people's. I think other folks that at least revered it from a European Romantic sense probably put a better flavor to it that communicates it better than Dr. Crawford. All right. So other questions for you that have come up. Do you listen to Hammerfall?
That is actually funny that Jason asked that, because I would say that my earliest memory of actually learning to appreciate, I guess, just music in general, but also like sort of my gateway drug into metal and things like that was actually Hammerfall. So Hammerfall is a Swedish band. I think they'd categorize as power metal. And I remember it might have been like 7 years old or something like that. And I was watching TV, and they had one of their songs, "Hearts on Fire." They had it on the music video. They had it on TV, and it's like, you should look it up on YouTube. It's pretty cheesy, They're out in some desolate, dark field, the band, and they're playing this epic song, and then you have these skeletons rising up from the ground, and they're approaching, and then you have their sort of mascot, I suppose, is sort of this warrior guy with a huge hammer. And at the end of the song, he slams the hammer into the ground, and all the skeletons are obliterated. And it's just a very, very cheesy musical video. But I was just mesmerized and just taken aback by that when I was a kid. And I mean, this was before I had access to the internet, so I saw it that one time, and then I didn't see it really for a long time again. And it just it brought me onto the metal train, especially the power metal train, really. So that's fun. I see he's asking second part, Roger Pontier. So I am guessing that Jason means Roger Pontare. I think. I don't.
Yes,
know.
He corrected it over in the chat. He corrected
Okay,
it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's also funny, because Roger Pontare, he is an incredible singer, and he has some really, really good songs. He is a bit special. So one of my favorite songs that I like listening to, even to this day, is the English one is "When Spirits Are Calling My Name," and the Swedish one is much better. We have the Eurovision Song Contest in Europe, and he represented Sweden. I can't remember exactly when that was, but he represented Sweden with that song, and it's supposed to be about sort of Native Americans and Sami people and Inuits and things of that nature, sort of singing about a warrior going and doing what is right because the spirits are calling his name. And Roger has like dressed himself up in very silly garb. He has like feathers all over him. It's sort of this very odd just mishmash of different native cultures. And he has like a Sami woman who's there beating a drum, and he has a Sami man who is doing a yoik. So he's doing like I guess a type of throat singing, perhaps you'd say. And then he has a Native American also like doing a rain dance or something like that on stage. But I've always had like felt a deep connection with that song. And I would argue that it is actually not about these other ethnicities, that it is actually sort of it does speak to white people, I think. And I mean, that song was sort of appropriated by a lot of sort of nationalists in Sweden, because it spoke to sort of the nationalists in people, in white people in particular. So I think that in a sense, he is sort of doing the spiel that, oh, I'm singing about these oppressed minorities all over the world. But it's like, so this is a song that's written by white people, and the guy who is singing it and being the centerpiece is a white person, and the band playing the music are white people, and it is in a white people language, Swedish. So I would say that it's actually not about minorities or like these other ethnicities, but it is actually about white people. It's just that he doesn't understand that. I think that when people create, they're not really in charge most of the time of the creation itself. It sort of just erupts out of them, and then you might add sort of veneers and sort of explanations after the fact and try to explain like, no, this is actually what I mean. But I think I find in many cases that there is something else going on that you're not conscious of. But yeah, that was a long little spiel. But yes, I listened to both Hammerfall and Roger Pontare.
All right. So, do you like ABBA?
Again, I don't have anything against ABBA, but I don't really listen to it. It's not my type of music.
We're the 70s cultural ambassadors of your people.
Well, I in my defense, I more or less down the middle genetically half Finnish and half Swedish, so I might not be the very best ambassador. No, but but it's not my type of music. So my type of music, I want sort of bombastic, heroic. I want music to tell the story of a hero fighting like a dragon or a beast or embracing destiny. That's the type of music that I like. I want music to tell an epic story, and I don't find that really in bands like ABBA necessarily.
What you
but
want
doesn't
is
mean that
Billy
they're bad.
Diver by Dio and watching the video because it's epic and amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Ronnie James Dio is an amazing lyricist. So Finn Wraith asks, where can you get a better copy of the Eddas? I think this is referring to better than Dr. Crawford's. So here's the thing. I'm not trying to be the arbiter on what Edda you can digest and what you can't. I would say that the more copies you get, the better, and comparing and contrasting between them is always very, very interesting. I like Hollander's Prose Edda because it was the first one I read. I don't think that they're, I don't think that Jackson Crawford's Edda is, necessarily horrible or blasphemous, the parts that I've read. I just, I would advise people read a little bit older sources than that, just because I think he has an agenda that they didn't necessarily share due to the climate at the time they did it. But, any number of copies, all of the copies, and see what matches, what doesn't, and why it doesn't. And I think you'll find passages in each that resonate with you a little bit better. Eric, do you like the Swedish and Finnish guy in Eurovision this year?
So I don't watch Eurovision. I think it's an absolute joke of a show, and I think it's just, in general, pretty degenerate stuff that is being presented. And I think that both the so I mean the Finnish, I haven't listened to the Finnish guy or whatever, but just the way he dresses and the way he looks, I'm very much not a fan. And the woman that represented Sweden, she is in fact herself not Swedish, I think is just wrong. And if I not mistaken, she sings in English, and this is a pet peeve I've had a long time. I mean, I'm not invested because, again, I don't watch Eurovision Song Contest. But I mean, if you're going to have a competition where you have European countries competing against each other with their like songs, music, I think that it wouldn't be too much to ask that an ethnic person of that country represents that country and also sings in that country's language, instead of everyone just having a different pop song in English. I really, really dislike it. I think it's just an absolute joke. But I'm not really invested in it because I don't watch it.
There you go, Finn. Now you've offended our guest. Our next question is all right, Survive the Jive showed a picture of Odenshoff in his recent video about the home shrine, and he didn't mention us as a group, that he had recommendations for setting one up. Did he reach out to us? No, he didn't reach out to us. One of my biggest gripes is that Thomas Rousel, who's the host of Survive the Jive, who's a really nice guy. I've met him. He seemed really great. This isn't a dig at him. It's something that I do take issue with. He is so very focused on, man, what would it be like if we actually had Asatru, instead of realizing that we do and being part of it. Asatru has been around in the modern context since 1968. The AFA, as it is now, has been around since 1995. We are trying very hard to build, to establish things, to build upon our tradition and to move forward. And there's a certain current that we always come back to of people wanting to tear everything down, or let's just start again. Let's start something new and fresh. Let's always be back at year one. For the same group of people that are so worshipful of things that are ancient and historical, if every year is year one, we don't allow something to become old. We don't allow something to become venerated. We don't allow for a tradition to take hold and for us to practice it into the future if every new guy needs to rebuild it in their own image. So he tends to casually disregard our existence while, in some ways living off the back of our successes, in the fact that this is at the forefront and the AFA has built so much with it. I really hope that one day he will acknowledge the role that the Asatru Folk Assembly has had in the modern practice of our faith. And, it would be great if even beyond that, he wanted to join us and be part of what we're doing. Also, again, for you with the Swedish questions, Eric, are there any Swedish or Scandinavian Viking films that you know of?
That's a good question. Nothing that comes to mind. The one thing that comes to mind, but it's not Swedish, is Korpen Flyger that's an Icelandic movie. I remember we watched that in school, and we had to sort of dissect the themes and story beats in that. But nothing that comes to mind really.
All right. What is the view on the Viking era in Sweden now? The fervor has died down in America, but what is the climate like over there?
I don't know if it's changed in any particular way. I mean, it's really as it is. I think, but perhaps in a degree to America. Maybe in America it's more exotified, but in Sweden I think it's more sort of, on the one hand, sort of romanticized as, and sort of like, oh, we descend from great Viking warriors, and it's very, very cool, and maybe I'll get a nice cool Viking tattoo because I saw the Vikings TV show, and sort of be afraid of me because I descend from great warriors. So and on the other hand, it's sort of like different point of view might be that, oh, what a barbaric time, we have come so far, we've left that behind us now. And I don't know if there's, I guess that there has been some little fervor around the Viking era in Sweden with these aforementioned shows that have been around lately. But I mean, it's like 99% of it is just shallow, just the aesthetic and just this romanticized idea of who the Vikings were, and your possible lineage to great warriors or not. But I think you may have skipped a question there, Matt. And Finn Wraith was asking a question.
Oh, I did, because you answered it earlier was the only reason. We can go back to it if you like. If you're half Finnish, do you speak Finnish?
Yes, very good that we're going back to it. So no, in fact, Finn might not have been around when I was answering that question, but no, I do not speak Finnish. But my ambition is that I would like to learn Finnish. So Finn, I know that you're in Finland, so maybe you should go ahead and send in an application and join already, and you can teach me Finnish. That would be great, and I can teach you.
But that's a really solid point. You're on here every week. I enjoy talking to you. I will still gladly talk to you and answer any and all of your questions if you don't. But unless there's a really good reason, you should join us and be part of what we're doing, because you seem very interested in it. We would love to have you being part of things. So we have, and it's not in the questions thing yet, but I do see it, so I'm going to go ahead and answer. There's two more questions that I see. Eric, are there any writings about the gods from Sweden that, like, Sweden is the source?
I would be surprised if there weren't, but nothing that comes to mind.
All right, and then the last question that I see is, Matt, thoughts about Dave Martell and his Bog show? Why isn't he AFA? Because Dave Martell wants to sit on the sidelines and complain and about stuff. Dave was in the AFA for a time, and he kept pretending that there was nothing near him or he couldn't make it to stuff. We invited him personally out to Winter Nights that was, within a half an hour of his house 2 years in a row. We had one of our folk builders try to get him, like, specifically set up moots to where he could come out, but he doesn't want to attend and do things in real life. He also wants to be really important in whatever he's part of, and he just kind of likes to stir chaos and problems in groups that he's in. And so, I don't think very highly of Dave Martell. He had a chance to put up or shut up and be part of what we're doing. He couldn't be bothered to even make it out to an event to say hi to people or to participate even for a second. Now he surrounds himself with other people of marginal character at best. He's been nice to me when he's spoken to me in person, but I don't have any great respect for Dave Martell, and his ilk that he is involved with. All right, so we're getting more questions coming up. All right, can you touch on the importance of cleanliness and ritual and why it's important to keep your body clean and the sacred space clean before participating in ritual? So I'm trying to figure out what to do with that question because it would seem obvious, yet we have people that don't get it. You first, an area that's sacred needs to be treated as special, needs to be taken care of, and we need to keep it in the best shape that we can out of respect and out of reverence. It's an act of devotion to care for sacred spaces. When you approach the gods, when you approach our folk, when you do these things, it's important to present your very best self. You want to present the very best version of who you are. And in general, don't be gross. Like, clean yourself, don't stink. These are all things that would seem to be common sense, but you have certain folks that don't get that. So we want to look our best, to smell our best, to be our best when we present ourselves to each other and before the gods, because what we're doing is important. And reputation is important. You don't want to be that guy that's gross that everybody laughs at behind their back because they're nasty. I'm not trying to, make it more shallow than it is. It really is that simple. And if you are going to cause your fellow worshipers and families and ladies and little kids to laugh at you or be disgusted by you, like, how substandard is that to present before our gods? You want to stand your very best and have our gods be proud of you. You also should want to impress the people around you and build a reputation for yourself that's positive. As a little bit of add-on, yeah, absolutely. In the Viking Age, cleanliness was super important. When I went to the big National Museum in Stockholm, the quote-unquote Viking exhibit was closed. It was being remodeled, but so much of the things that were there were these items about cleaning out earwax and little scissory things to trim your beard and trim things. The appearance of our ancestors, these shows you see on TV with the shoulder pelts and the ooga booga bones and crap all over them. No, they dressed nice. They had elaborately dyed fabrics. They made a huge point of their appearance. And our lore talks about that. It talks about dressing a certain way when you go to the thing or when you go to the assembly. Your reputation was everything. You wanted your armor and your weapons and your ship and your clothing to be top notch, to look sharp. Our ancestors wanted to be the best looking version of themselves, presenting ourselves as our very best before our gods, before our enemies, before our friends. Reputation is everything. And there's so many ways to do it. One of the easiest and most effective is to make yourself look the best you can. And I think that's actually the last question tonight. Eric, thank you so much for being with us. I know that it is a very inconvenient time, but I think it's been great having you on. You've been an amazing guest, and I think that our audience has really enjoyed getting to talk to you tonight. I know I have.
I just wanted to add, actually, on that, if I'm able to.
Sure.
Going back to Thorfest in 2019, when you married me and Laura, and I was horribly sick, and I was like, when I'm saying I was sick, I was really sick. Like, I had like food poisoning or something. I was lying in bed and I was puking and stuff. And I remember you and a couple of the guys who were sitting talking about something, and maybe you remember this, that I sort of interrupted you guys, and I said, I promise you guys, I am usually much more entertaining than I am right now. And I sort of apologized that I wasn't being able to be sort of part of the fun. So I don't know if you remember that, but it just
I do
reminded me.
remember that, as a matter of fact. I do. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please tell your lovely wife that we said hello. And yeah, it's been great having you on, and I hope that we can have you on again sometime very soon.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Remember, until next time, hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA. Remember that victory never sleeps.